Hey everybody, I'm Angie Peacock. I'm a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and healing coach. That means I support people who are coming off or healing from psychiatric drugs. If you are on YouTube watching this later, please hit subscribe and like so that more people can see my content. If you're on Facebook, please like the page. I think it says like 10% of the people that read my stuff actually subscribe or like the page. Come on, just give us a like. Okay. Anyway, the business stuff is over. All right. Today I'm introducing you to Michelle Fuchs. She reached out to me on Instagram after seeing some interviews on YouTube. And she's like, Angie, I really want to share my story. So me and her talked for about 2 hours a couple weeks ago, and we had so much in common. It's eerily similar. And I just think this is going to be a really cool discussion. I have a feeling it's going to be healing for me too, which it's like, I like to think I'm all the way healed. I don't need to talk about anything, but when you have somebody that has such a similar story to you, you can't help but get a little healing out of it. So I hope you all enjoy this conversation. I am not going to read her bio because it's mostly her story. So we're just going to start off really easy and slow. Michelle, welcome. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. All right. So let's start off slow and simple. Just kind of talk about like what brought you onto psychiatric drugs. You know, what kind of struggles did you have as a kid? Like to start from the beginning, if you can.
So I was looking back, I was always a sensitive kid, and I kind of always felt like I had to just, I don't know if it was really instilled in me necessarily somehow, or if it was just my personality that I felt like I shouldn't have any negative emotions, or really even, I didn't even really express too many happy emotions. I just felt like I should be even keel all the time, even back to childhood. So, I mean, looking back, I can see that I was an anxious kid. I mean, there were some situations that led to me having some separation anxiety from my grandparents, that I was with them a lot when I was younger because my mom went through some things. And then we moved when I was 3. And I remember even that young, I remember feeling like that homesick pit in my stomach feeling from the time I was about 4 on. So just always kind of anxious. But I think from the outside, most people thought I was like this happy, you know, like extroverted kid. Inside, I kind of swept it all under the rug and just try to deal with it on my own, even at a young age. So when I was about, I think I was about 9, and I remember complaining a lot about my shoulders and my neck hurting. Just, I was achy. And, you know, whether it was, I did have some medical stuff as a kid, and it could have been partly due to that. It could have been because I was anxious. But it, you know, just maybe tension in my body. And so I would complain a lot about headaches and muscle aches. And so my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor gave me, this blows my mind now, but at 9 years old, he gave me a prescription for Elavil, and which is a tricyclic antidepressant. And I remember specifically, I remember this well, him saying, we use this off label for muscle pain. So, you know, my memory's a little bit foggy because it's been a long time, but I remember taking that and feeling really groggy, and it was hard to function. I remember being at school and just having a lot of stomach aches and being really tired all the time. And I've talked to my mom about this a lot. We can't really remember exactly the time frame that I was on the medication. She said she thought it was probably maybe 9 months to a year. And then she was uneasy about me being on it, but you know, there was no information at the time. So she just kind of decided that she didn't really want me on it. So, you know, there was no taper. It was just, I was on this medication and then I was off of it. So I started having anxiety, I remember. And of course, as a kid, and a kid who internalized everything and just tried to act like everything was fine on the outside, I didn't know what was going on. And I just kind of tried to like just put on a happy face and go on with life. And then when I think it was almost 10, a friend of mine died in an accident. And the way I found out about that is I walked into Walmart and I saw a wreath with his name on it and his picture. And I just remember feeling like I was going to drop to the floor. And after that, I started having anxiety attacks. And I think, looking back, combination of grief, and that was a traumatic situation for me, but also I was in, withdrawal from the Elavil and didn't know it. And so I kind of just dealt with that for a while. And then I finally told my mom and dad, I remember telling them, like, something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is. And I would just have all these crazy symptoms. And and it was panic attack symptoms. But at the time I thought like I was dying.
Right.
So, and back to the doctor I went, and at age 11, he put me on Xanax. Wow. Again,
this is in the 90s, right? This is like, that sounds like around 92, 91.
Yes. That would have, yes, probably about, I was born in 77. So I don't know, do the math.
2 years older than me. So that was probably 89.
Yeah.
Something like that.
About right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was a freshman in 92. So, yeah. So, again, my mom and I've kind of tried to piece together the timeline of the Xanax. I don't really know for sure, maybe 6 months or a year. I do remember looking back, like I had started having these weird food sensitivities and more panic and just like neurological symptoms, the tingling and numbness and like head zaps and stuff like that. And again, like I was just kind of a deal with it yourself and move on kind of a kid. So at some point I ended up not taking the Xanax anymore. And, it's all kind of like hindsight at this point.
Yes,
like, I'm like, no wonder I felt so weird,
Yes.
And, so I would say I was probably about, I don't know, halfway through high school when I can look back and see that like everything had kind of calmed down. I feel like my junior, senior year of high school were pretty normal. Fast forward to 2001, got married in 99, had our first baby in 2001. And after Jake was born, I had postpartum anxiety, but didn't know what it was. He was several months old when I just felt like, and I need to back up a minute too. There's so many details and it's hard to keep it all straight. But, when we moved to where we live now, we moved up here when I was a junior in high school. My mom and dad at the time and my sister were put on antidepressants. I was the only one in the family who was not on antidepressants. That doctor, I remember when I was 18, he told me that my whole family was on antidepressants and I likely needed them too. And gave me the whole, diabetes, insulin, that. And I kept saying, I'm not depressed though. And he was like, well, genetics are, your genetics aren't good and you probably would benefit from antidepressants. And to me, an antidepressant was for depression, which I never had. I was anxious, but I didn't have depression. So anyway, that was kind of stuck in my head. I mean, I was like, no, why would I want to take anything like that? I don't need it. I'm fine. So anyway, so when I started having postpartum anxiety and getting all these kind of weird, I had like adrenaline and just felt really anxious, which then made me feel like, how am I going to raise my baby? Like what, and I started feeling kind of helpless and lost. And so I went to the doctor and told him, I think I have, some kind of anxiety going on. And so he started me on Lexapro. And this was the same doctor, because I thought, well, yeah, I guess he's right. I guess this is the time. It's finally hit
showing up.
Yeah. here we go. And I just need to get on this medicine so I can be normal and raise my child and have a good life, you know? So started the Lexapro, and, you know, looking back, I can say that like that feeling of adrenaline did go away immediately. Like it seemed like I don't remember having any negative effects when I started it. I just remember like things got better.
Mm-hmm.
But about a year later, weird stuff started happening. I started getting food sensitivities again, and I didn't connect that to my childhood whatsoever. I just thought like, well, that's weird. Like maybe my body's changing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I started having heart palpitations, and it's funny, like when there have been so many symptoms along the way, like when I try to identify the symptoms, my mind kind of goes blank. So I have them all written down, but
Yeah.
so I'm trying to just remember off the top of my head. But so I started having a lot of digestive problems. Oh, I had breathing problems. I started noticing that I just felt like fatigued and was having like exercise intolerance. And I didn't know what to make of it. And so I just tried not to think about it. As the years went by, things got worse and worse. We'll just fast forward to about 2013, 14. Things were pretty rough with I was still functioning, but my stomach was just terrible. I had more food sensitivities. I felt this weird mix of like, I didn't really care about anything anymore, but I felt like physical anxiety. I remember thinking, why don't I care about things I should care about? Or why am I not finding things sad that are sad? Like what, like I had enough wherewithal, I guess, to know that like it wasn't normal that I wasn't feeling things, but I didn't know why.
Wow.
So the physical symptoms kind of escalated more and more. And it was probably about the end of 2014. I remember it was Christmas break. My kids were home from school, and I was so worn out, and my heart was skipping so bad, and I had no energy, and all I wanted to do was lay on the couch. And I'm sure I had a lot of other symptoms too that I can't really remember. But I remember the heart skipping was so bad that I told my husband, I said, I just want to sleep, because if I die, I won't know. And that was my mindset. Like, it wasn't like, oh, something's wrong and I need to figure it out. It was just like, let me just go to sleep.
Let me die. Wow.
You know, like I was just so like numb and not, you know, not able to really process that like something's not right. So, beginning of 2015, I started finally connecting it to Lexapro, because I started having paradoxical reaction. So like, as soon as I took the pill at night, I would get dizzy, and I would have like an avalanche of all these weird symptoms. I would feel super anxious. And finally, after I think probably a couple weeks of that, I started thinking, okay, I've heard that a lot of times antidepressants stop working. So I think something's going on with this antidepressant. So, you know, maybe I just need to get off of it. I had no concept that there was like tapering involved or anything. So I went to my primary care doctor, told her, you know, I think this medicine is just not working out for me anymore. I've been on it this long, but like I'm having all these weird symptoms, and I think it's from the medicine. So she said, well, why don't we, you probably still need medication. So why don't we just try Effexor? So I tried that for 2 weeks, and I got more physical symptoms and more anxiety and more adrenaline. And I, you know, they always say, just wait it out. You know, you need to wait a few weeks. I waited a few weeks and sent her an email. I'm like, I can't keep taking this. This is like, I remember this specific symptom that like, I felt like my shoulders were drawing up. Like it was painful, like cramping, painful, along with the other weird stuff that was happening. So, went back to her. She said, let's try Prozac. It's one of the oldest, and it's easy to get off of in case you want to get off of it. Tried Prozac. And again, you know, like at first, like some of the effects that I had from Effexor settled down, but I started getting more symptoms. And then I started feeling like I could cry all the time, and I wasn't a crier. So I thought, this isn't working either. So I emailed her back and I said, I don't think I can take this either. Things are just kind of getting worse. And she said, well, it sounds like, we just need to taper you off. So, tapering off was take one every other night for a couple weeks and stop taking it.
Ugh.
So that's what I did. And initially things got better. It was like, oh, such a relief. Like, it was like my body was relieved to not have that in me.
Mm-hmm.
But then about 5 weeks later, it just kind of hit. And I thought, like, wow, maybe I am just an anxious mess and I do need this medication, but I've already tried 3 and it's just gotten worse. So like, there's no going back. Let me just see if I can steamroll through this. So as the summer went on, I kept thinking, do I have MS? Like what's wrong with me? I was a runner. When I would run, like everything would get worse, which I didn't understand.
Yep.
And I had like my right side, my right arm, like numbness, tingling. My hand felt funny. I remember feeling like I had hot water dripping down my legs. It was all very, neurological.
Yeah. Yep.
And then that kind of turned into, like DPDR, visual symptoms. I was so disconnected. I kept looking at my dog and my children and thinking like, why do I not feel anything? This is like, what's wrong with me? I felt like I was trapped in my mind.
Ugh.
And again, I just thought, I just got to get through this. I just got to get through it. Surely it'll be okay eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So by that fall, September 2015, the symptoms just kind of kept piling on, changing as they do in withdrawal. And by September, I was crying like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when it started and I remember thinking, what is wrong with me? I can't stop crying and there's nothing wrong. Like, I feel like I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have children to raise. I had 3 kids by that point and a husband. And like, I got to figure something out. So I went back to the doctor and made the mistake of saying, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Well, thankfully they didn't send me to a psych ward. I just said, like, I just feel like all this adrenaline and like chaos. And so that's kind of when things really went south.
But can I ask a clarifying question? During that period, like from that summer and the fall, when you go to your doctor and you explain what's happening to you, did anyone recognize the nature of what was happening? What was their explanation?
That it was just anxiety. This is why you should be on medications.
Yep.
You're just anxious. And I tell you, I think this is important. I had done a little bit of digging when this was going on in the summer. And I had found surviving antidepressants, and I read some of the stories on there, some of the posts on the forum. And I remember thinking, these are not my people. Like, this is not what's wrong with me. These people are nuts. Like, this is not, it's not this, because it wasn't bad enough yet, and and I think that's important because this whole experience is so unbelievable unless you've been through it. That even I in the beginning was like, no, that's not me. Like, these people are crazy. Like, I think
I thought that too. And I thought I'll be healed in 6 months. Like, there's no way. Yeah. It's so deceiving. Yeah.
So I just kind of disregarded that and thought, like, that's not me. It's not that bad. It can't be that. Just, keep going. And then, so in September was really, when they gave me Wellbutrin and Ativan, and my heart rate went up to 140 something laying down. I remember laying in my bedroom floor. I was just like akathisia, which I didn't even know was a thing at the time. Couldn't lay in bed because I couldn't lay still, and my husband had to sleep. So I was laying on the floor and I was like, my heart rate is like 145 and it's midnight and I'm laying in the floor. Like, what is going on? So I went to the emergency room after 2 weeks of that. And actually went to the emergency room 3 times. And it was the 3rd time that the doctor said, I think you're having a reaction to the Wellbutrin. Wow. So he said, stop taking that. And then, so I did, I stopped taking that, and I'm like, but what next? I'm crazy. So I need something. Right. And I've tried this, and this, I just got to keep looking for the right thing. So back to the doctor I went 2 days later, and they gave me, I think, gabapentin. There was like a whole rolling disaster of medications: Buspar, gabapentin, Zoloft, Klonopin. I'm missing several. There were 11 total from the time I got off of Lexapro until 8 months later.
Wow.
When I remember the last doctor I saw was a psychiatrist, and that was kind of like the nail in the coffin. He's the one that said, well, if you were my wife, I would want Zoloft and Klonopin. He said, take this and you'll feel better tomorrow. So I went home, I got the prescriptions filled, took them. And that next day, I could literally not walk anymore. And I had POTS, and I had that, like, I felt like gravity was sucking me through the floor. I couldn't walk on my own. I had so many symptoms, and I was still listening to doctors, because, this whole time I'm checking with doctors. This is what I feel now. This is what's going on now. No, you're just super anxious. Your anxiety is just out of control. Just keep taking it. You'll be fine in a month. So I stayed on that for probably 3 weeks, and literally, and it makes me so, like, I fight like being mad at myself, but at the same time, like, I was just being a good patient, So I'm like, why did I not realize sooner what was happening? But I didn't. So it was several weeks of that. And I was like, okay, I can't even function anymore. And I was to the point where I would take the Klonopin and I would have like full-blown hallucinations. And I remember finally one night I took it again, and I was on the floor, and I looked at my husband and I said, these drugs are poisoning me. And like, that was my moment. I knew that I had to just be done with all of it. Finally, the physical symptoms were so bad that I knew I was being poisoned by these medications. After that, I ended up going to the hospital because of the POTS, and my heart rate was so high. Thankfully, at that point, I started digging online, and I found Matt Samet's blog on Mad America, and that was like my aha moment. Like, this is what's happening to me. His story was so similar to mine in many ways, all the different medications, and, his physical symptoms were so close to mine. I thought, this is exactly what's happening to me. And, thankfully he wrote about how doctors tried to diagnose him with bipolar disorder because he didn't respond correctly to these medications. So when I went to the hospital, because my heart rate was so high, I knew at that point, I'm like I knew I can't take anything else. They probably don't have anything to offer me, but I feel like I need to be monitored because I'm afraid I'm going to die. Yeah. So I was admitted in the hospital, and they, sure enough, tried to diagnose me with bipolar disorder because I didn't react correctly to the medications. And thank God I'd read what happened to Matt, because, I probably still would have thought, like, maybe that is what it is. Maybe I do need something.
You would have get sucked in again. Yeah.
But instead, like, I found Jen Lee's blog, and between those two resources, I started piecing, like, this is what it is.
Right.
So I remember that hospital stay. I looked at my husband and I said, it's just me and you, and I got to just get out of here and go home, and either I survive or I don't, but there's nothing else. Like, we just got to try to survive. I've got to try to make it through this. And I cold turkeyed the last of the Klonopin and the Zoloft, and it was a total nightmare for a long time.
But I want to say I'm proud of you, because inside it's so clear to me, the intuition that you had was just like, this is not right, something's wrong, and it was following you through every step of the way, and they kept talking you out of that, but it was so strong. You were like, no, I know this is not who I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's so clear that I can hear it just while you're talking.
Yeah. And I've said so many times, you know, as terrible as this has been for me, as badly as my nervous system was injured, I think the physical symptoms really saved me, because I know a lot of people only have the mental symptoms, or predominantly mental symptoms. And that keeps you in that loop of, it's just me, I'm crazy. But for me, my body was in such bad shape. And it's funny because when I tell the story, like, there's no way, and people who go through this know, but there's no way to articulate how many symptoms I had and how severe they were. Hundreds. Without sounding like I'm making it up.
Yeah.
But the physical symptoms, I think, saved me from things getting even worse, because if it had only been the mental stuff, I would have just kept searching and searching. I could have ended up in the psych ward. And, you know, as out of my mind as I was the last time I was in the hospital, I told my husband, I have to hide behind these physical symptoms. Because again, I had read Matt's story and I was like, I can't talk about what's going on in here. Like, I just want to make sure I'm not going to die, because my, you know, the physical symptoms were so extreme.
Yeah. I'm going to actually send this paper about how to distinguish relapse from withdrawal. So I'm going to have my assistant put that in the comments, because that's one of the markers. Like, do you have physical symptoms? You don't like, if you read the DSM that has all the diagnoses in there, it doesn't say heart palps, you know, passing out, like laying on the floor, like dizzy. That's not a mental disorder. So like, that's one of the key ways. Like, are you getting brain zaps and tremors and electrical sensations in your body? Like, it's very clear, you know, this is something else. Yeah. All right. So that brings us, well, I want to ask one more clarifying question too, because I see this so much. Your story is so common to like the people that I see now in the coaching practice, where I always see it go wrong when they keep going back to doctors and they keep throwing meds at them. Like that sets you up for like it's an injury. Like, I know you called it withdrawal, and you know, when I had the interview with Joseph during the doctor, I was like, right in the first 5 minutes, I was like, you keep calling it withdrawal, but these people are injured. Like, they're not even in withdrawal yet. They're on the meds and they're extremely sick and they have so many symptoms, they can't even taper. Exactly. And I probably have like 20 people in that situation right now. Yeah. And the doctor just here. To me, the greatest tragedy in all of this is the doctor, the whole industry's inability to recognize an injury or adverse effects, or this person is sick on these meds. This person is not doing well. The lady before you, I talked to a practitioner in Arizona before you, and I was just kind of screening her to see if I could send clients her way if they need a prescriber in Arizona. And she said, Angie, I saw it on the first day. Like, why is this person on 6 milligrams of Xanax and they don't feel good and they are full of panic and anxiety? The med is obviously not working. So anyway, I just want to call attention to that like every person that you saw, including the emergency room, except for that one last visit, they did not recognize this person is having adverse effects.
Well, and even when I was in the hospital, they admitted me because they thought I had POTS. They, you know, I told 3 of the doctors that rounded, I told them, like, you know, tell us your story, what happened. And I told them all, like, this started with the medications. Like, this is not like, I've never had anything like this in my life. And they all looked at me and said, it's not possible. It's just a coincidence. And I kept saying, but I didn't have any of this until, and they said, well, that's not how these medications work. They don't do that to you. And that was kind of the moment that I knew I'm going to have to go home and do this myself. You know, I'm going to have to survive this myself.
Yeah.
There's no help.
No help. And they didn't recognize it and they didn't offer any meaningful treatment for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, what's so crazy too, is my desire for not validation, even really confirmation from the medical community. Like, I wanted someone to just confirm. And I think that's just kind of how we're programmed, you know, but there's no confirmation. There's no validation. I mean, it's very rare. I did find a doctor at Cleveland Clinic who was amazing. It was 6 months later. And he's like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. This is exactly what happened to you. And he said, you know, this your nervous system is injured. And he said, it's not permanent, it's temporary, but it could take a long time to recover from it. And he was very validating, because he was angry because of what happened to me. He said, you told them exactly what was happening to you. Yeah. And nobody listened. And he kept saying, I wish I had a time machine, because this should not have happened. Yeah. So I did, in the end, get my confirmation, you know, and it felt really validating to have a very well-known neurologist look at me and say, you were smart and you figured this out, and you were just trying to be a good patient, and no one listened to you. And really, that was all the peace I needed. At that point, I just, you know, I just knew this is about survival. Just go home and survive. Amazing.
Yeah. So, whew, it sounds so much like my process. I'll just share this one thing. Like, I kept, when I figured out what happened to me too, I found Jen Lee's blog on Huffington Post about benzo withdrawal.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, that's what happened to me. And then I found Benzo Buddies, and then I started reading, same as you. I was like, no, this is not, wait, maybe it is, you know. But then I started, because I was at a medical school where I got my degree at, access to the medical database for all the journal articles. So I would type in benzo withdrawal and I'd read all the papers, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what's happening to me. So I'd print all the papers out. I'd take them to my doctor, my psychiatrist. And I mean, I'd have a huge stack, and I'd wear my Washington University t-shirt, hoping that he would take me seriously. And I would be like, read it. This is what's happening to me. Read it. He would not read it. He would not make eye contact with me. He would just sit there and type. And I was so angry at the time. I was like, I want you to write down every single one of my symptoms. And I would sit there and make him type it, type it. Cause I'm like, one day I want to have record of what happened to me. Cause one day this will be a thing and people will recognize it. And I think it's coming, you know, but
it is.
Anyway, but there was a point at which, when I was like 14 months off, you know, I knew, just like you, I'm just going to have to suffer. This guy is not going to help me. They're the ones that did this. I can't kill myself, because then they're going to think something that's not happening. Like, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening. So at about the 14-month mark, I just said, Angie, you're banging your head against the wall trying to get this guy to hear you. Like, he's not listening. He does not want to hear it. And I thought at a certain point, how could he sleep at night knowing he almost killed me? Like, he wouldn't be able to do that. So he can't even take in like what happened to you. And then the worst part was, I walked across the street to the hospital. I sat in the grass and I started crying. And I was like, I can't do this, you know, like, this system is not going to help me. And that was kind of like when the realization came. But then I caught myself and I said, Angie, you can't cry on the grass across from a psych hospital. You can't. What do you think is going to happen? A cop is going to see you. They're going to pick you up and put you in there. So stop, pull it together, you know? And then I just like, I can't even cry about what happened to me, or relief. Like, I felt like I needed to like let it go and grieve what happened. And like, I knew that was my last visit with a psychiatrist. Yeah. That was it. I'm done. I don't care what it's going to take, but I can't do this anymore, you know? So yeah, I get that. So let's talk about your healing process. Like, when you made that decision, like, I'm just going to have to do this. I don't know what it's going to take. You're literally, it's like walking it. I can very much relate to you about, I don't know if I'm going to live or die. Like, literally that's the realization I had too. And it's from second to second. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to get through lunch or to get to dinner or get to tomorrow. Like, how, and I have lots of people in the same boat right now. So can you take me through like your healing process, like the acute stage? Like, what was that like?
It was terrible. Like, I don't have words. I mean, it's like what I said earlier, anything that I try to say about it just seems like I'm being overly dramatic, because I look back, I don't know how I lived. Physically, I don't know how I survived it. My husband was amazing, and he kept me alive. He had to carry me to the bathroom and make my food for me. And I knew that I wanted, I had to live for my kids. I very quickly, I don't know that I was ever necessarily suicidal, because I'm terrified of death to begin with. So that, but I had those thoughts, like, only in, like, I just needed relief. I felt like I just need relief. Like, how can I, get out of this suffering. But but I knew like I have to make it for my kids. I can't leave my husband with no wife. I can't leave my children with no mom. So I think I really realized quickly, and it's just even more obvious to me now, like how little we need to actually survive. Because I feel like, and that sounds weird when I say that, but I think we all have this iron will inside of us. We're all so resilient, and our body wants to live. Our mind, like, we want to fight. We're that's how we're created, with just a will to live. And so for me, it was just survival. It was there were, for years, I mean, 2.5 years of my life, it was just suffering every second of the day and just doing whatever I could to get through, whether it was like pacing, or I say pacing, it was more like rocking, because I couldn't really walk very well. I was still so weak, or crying, or whatever I had to do. I read a lot. Like, I read as much information online as I could find, just to keep me going, and like just to give me any hope. I kept, again, back to Matt Samet, I just kept thinking, this guy was as bad off as I am, and he's living life now. Yes. 8 years ago, there were a lot less resources online than there are now. But still now, some of the things I see, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this interview is to give people hope, because there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of it is still, leaves you feeling like, well, I may or may not get better. Yes. And I believe that everyone gets better. And if anyone knew how bad off I was, I mean, when I say I couldn't walk for almost 2.5 years, I literally could hardly walk. And to go from having hundreds of symptoms and not being able to function on my own, to now I still have symptoms every day, but it's a completely different level. I work again. I started working in September, which is amazing. I have, despite like these annoying leftover symptoms and still, trying to recover, I have a good life now. And I just feel like that, people need that. People need to see that when they're going through the worst. The thing I think that's the most helpful is to see someone who was as bad off as you are, who's now, living and functioning and enjoying life and laughing. And, I believe that everybody heals.
Yeah. There's so much rich stuff here that you're talking about. I recently made a video about toxic negativity. And what I meant by that was, even me, I read so many stories. I read about akathisia. I saw people with movement disorders. I saw people with permanent sexual dysfunction. I saw the word permanent scared the crap out of me. Like, I mean, already you're in a fearful state. You're super vulnerable to suggestion. In your brain, the withdrawal brain, let's just call it that, or the injured brain, you see only the negative. You think it's going to be you. It makes it the worst case scenario. Every little thing that's happening to you is like an emergency, a crisis. I would have been in the ER every single day, the amount of symptoms and fear. And same as you, like me, I didn't take a shower for 2.5 years. Like, I could not stand up in a shower. Like, just, that's how bad it was. But your mind is, and it's almost like, this is such a hard topic for me, because I have some clients that are believing all the bad stories, and they have gone down that rabbit hole, and they've pursued the worst case scenario. And I'm like, I can't even talk them out of it. Like, they believe it 100%. And to me, that's a tragedy within our community, because there's so many scared people. Like, just think of it as like a whole bunch of injured brains that are super fearful, and they're all sharing information, and they're reading like one story or one journal article, they paste it, and it's about a rat study somewhere in freaking China or something. I don't know. And it's like, okay, but rat studies don't always translate to human beings. Okay. Like, but people don't know that, you know? So it's a super fearful people with all damaged nervous systems, and they're reading scary stuff and they're believing it. And then that doesn't help our healing process. You know what I mean? So my way of dealing with that was I just blocked everything that scared me. I could not deal with it. And that's not to say everything, because I was an admin of a benzo group for 2 years. So I had to read every single comment and every single post. And I had to just keep my head focused. Like, maybe you could call it denial. You can call it survival. You can call it whatever you want. I was like, I'm not entertaining that. I have to believe. I believed, same as, I know you've had lots of talks with Baylissa. Baylissa used to say, like, you know, people heal from this. You will heal. You will heal. And I just was like, I don't believe it for myself. My brain doesn't believe it, but I got to believe Baylissa because she's seen more cases than I have. I mean, that's all I got to go on. And that little tiny kernel of belief was enough to get me through, you know? So tell me about like your experience with that.
Well, and I think too, I mean, I definitely did not believe that, you know, everyone thinks that they're different. Like my story is going to be different, but, and, you know, looking back, I can say that, you know, it doesn't really matter if you believe or not. Just keep yourself alive. Like, if you don't believe, that's okay. If you don't have any positive thoughts whatsoever, that's okay. If you are not, you know, going through this process in a way that's, you know, graceful, there was nothing graceful about any of it for me. It doesn't matter. You just
stay alive.
Keep yourself alive. And, you know, I loved your interview with Matt Marine. I thought he was so relatable, and that going through this, you have so many people giving you such bad advice from the outside, because if you haven't been through this, there's no way you understand what's going on. And, you know, a lot of the bad advice I got was super harmful to me, and it's still painful, but I'm, you know, I can kind of shrug it off now that I'm better enough. But, you know, at the time it was, you're not praying enough. You're not trying hard enough. You're not, you know, thinking positively enough. You're, you know, whatever, all these things. People had all these platitudes, all these things I should be doing. Well, I was so injured. My brain was injured. My body was injured. And like you said, a lot of the symptoms are like, our brain is just, we're in a state of fight or flight. I mean, how everything is a red alert to our brain. How can you have any positive thoughts or emotions or hope when you're going through, you're just living in chaos? So that's kind of, I made peace with that at some point. Like, it's okay that this is really ugly, and, you know,
just stay alive. Just stay alive. Just stay alive.
Yeah. And that's something that, like, I feel like when I'm speaking to the, you know, like some of the worst cases, because that was me. And I feel like I really wish that someone had given me permission to just survive, because surviving is enough. You're doing, that's like your full-time job. That's all you have to do.
That's it. Now here's a touchy subject. The other aspect is, you know, there's protracted groups on Facebook. I have a protracted support group. We're like the most stigmatized group of all people with this injury, because we scare other people. I can't, and I hear this all the time. Angie, it took you 6 years to feel normal. I can't do this for 6 years. I can't, you know? And I tell them, I couldn't do it either if I thought it was going to take 6 years. Like, I literally had to go minute to minute to second to second to second. And I was terrified, same as you, of death. I was terrified, of the potential that it could go on that long. I was terrified when I looked at my medical records and seeing how many drugs I was put on. And then I had like anthrax vaccines on top of it. And I was at a war, and I was exposed to burn pits. And I had all of these reasons of why my recovery was going to be a lot different than other people. And I didn't even know how I was going to make it. So can you talk about, like, what is it like being a protracted person still with symptoms? You know, I want to call attention to this too. You and I both have symptoms. We both live full lives, and we live good lives. And we've somehow learned to live with what's left, but we still hang on to hope that it's still going to get better even now. Yeah. So go for it.
So full disclosure, today is a wave day.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah.
I've had some, it's funny. The last 2 days have been a little bit wacky for me, but I've had a lot of improvement over the last year. So I'm at the point where it doesn't scare me anymore. Like it's annoying. It's really annoying. It's frustrating, but I'm not in that mindset now. Like, oh gosh, I'm having like an avalanche of things today. That means that, it's not going to go away for a long time. It could be tonight or tomorrow that, I feel better. Yeah. But where was I going with that?
Oh, sorry. Just being protracted and still having symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So everything is kind of dialed down now, compared to what it was. Like I said, this year has really been just my biggest year of progress so far. But as far as it's weird trying to kind of find your place in the community when you are this far out, because like you said, you don't want to scare people. And then you and I have talked about this too. When you're this far out and you still have some symptoms, people are like, well, you must be doing something wrong. And you must be, and like you, I'm a purist. I'm not doing, there's
nothing.
I don't take medications, I don't take supplements even. I know that's helpful for some people, but I just don't. And I don't drink, I don't have any bad habits like that, so it's just this is how long it's taking my nervous system to heal. And I always think about, I'm not going to be able to articulate this the way Baylissa does, but she always used to say so emphatically, like, yeah, I'm going to use words that Baylissa doesn't use. This really sucks for, a period of time. And like, sometimes it goes on a lot longer than you think or want or hope. But in the whole scheme of things, when you look at your life, like when this is over, you're going to look back and it's going to kind of be like a blip on the radar.
Blink. Yeah.
So you have like all this life to live when it's over. And it's terrible. And it makes me angry that I've gone through this and that I feel like years of my life were taken away. But at the same time, when you start healing and you start seeing like some really, good recovery, it kind of all starts to fade away, like it's hard for me on good days, which I have mostly good days, even with symptoms now. But on those days, like the way I relate to what happened to me is very different now. Yes. Like it's not, I kind of describe it as like, when you have a migraine, migraines are horrible, but when the migraine goes away, you just go on with your life and you're living. You're not thinking about, oh my gosh, that migraine was terrible. It lasted for 3 days. It was awful. Yes. It's just kind of like, you just start to move on. Yes. But you also have to kind of wait till that time frame, because you can't force that. You can't, it happens when it happens.
Yeah, it unfolds. It kind of unfolds over time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so definitely that has definitely been unfolding for me this last year. I have days where symptoms are kind of like background noise. I might have like an uptick of something at some point during the day. And then I do still have these random days where I'm like, forgot about this, I forgot about that. Yeah. But it doesn't last as long anymore. And I'm still doing what I need to do. And, I'm still living despite the symptoms. Whereas in the beginning, it was,
couldn't do anything.
Couldn't do anything. Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting topic, because I'm still trying to articulate it, I think, because it's been recent for me too, the last year, where I felt like really good, like every once in a while. And it's not every day. I still have a background noise. And I mean, I can't even, like, I'd really have to dig deep to articulate what symptoms I have left. But I would generally say I just don't feel great all the time. Like I just feel blah or yucky or heavy, but I still hike and I mountain bike and I'm going to go to the hot springs after this, like I still do stuff. It's just kind of like low level background noise. But I told somebody this the other day. I said, once you get like a glimpse of life and you start to feel good and things are not like screaming at you all day, it's like you live deeper in the moment now. Like we had to learn how to live in the present moment, like very, very deeply. And that sticks with you to where like now I'm living so deeply in the present moment, I could die tomorrow and I'd be fine with it. Like I feel you just live more deeply and you live differently and you're more grateful. Not that I want that to happen to anybody, but it's hard for me to explain. It's just like I don't spend my days thinking about all the stuff that they did to hurt me and I'm angry at them. My work enough is fulfilling enough that it feels like I am getting some justice for what happened to me and I'm helping other people get through the process. So that's the part for me, but I just mean like you just feel different on this side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's very true. And I was never one who could live in the moment. I was always just like thinking about like either what's next or worrying about what's next or whatever. And that is definitely something that I've noticed over the last year that I can really, probably the last couple of years, honestly, like there are moments where I just can like soak it up and just be, you know, and I was never like that before. It was always either on the drugs, it was just foggy and like, you know, or, you know, before even I was just kind of an anxious person. And I mean, I think honestly, I'll always have some measure of anxiety. I think you know, I'm a highly sensitive person and I think deeply and I have a lot of empathy, too much for my own good sometimes. And, you know, there's a lot of, but that's, you know, that's not a disease. That's not, you know, those are real emotions. That's what makes me me. And that's a whole other topic. But yeah, I'm finding a lot more of the time I'm just living in the present, and that's like a whole new thing for me.
Yeah. I also want to touch on the topic of hindsight. A lot of people that I see and work with, there might like be in the middle of the process. And when they tell me their story, I think I might not say it to them all the time, but I'll think this is all going to make sense to you later. You know, you're going to go back and piece your life back together in a different way than you understand it now, you know, but that takes time and that takes unfolding and you can't really rush it. So even in my own life, I look back at my stuff like, oh my God, that explains why I freaked out when I was trying to sell a house and I couldn't stop crying. Or that makes sense why I was so socially anxious during that period of time. Or for me, like this keeps flashing in my head, so I guess I have to say it. But I was in a news article and I was on the front page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and it was me standing in line at a grocery store with my service dog. I have my foot on the grocery cart in my hand, and I'm like this, like I'm terrified, like I could not stand in line at the grocery store. This was like 2008 or something. And at the time, I just thought, I'm a disabled vet and I have severe anxiety and PTSD and I can't even stand in line at the grocery store. No, that's not what it was. That's not at all what was happening. You know, I can look back and say, oh, that was when they put me in the hospital and they took me off Lyrica overnight and they put me back on Ativan for 2 weeks. And then I had severe anxiety when I came off that 2 weeks of Ativan. That's what happened. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was mentally ill, you know? So can you tell me about like looking backwards, like how has your life narrative changed and shaped over time through your healing process?
I mean, I can definitely, like, I look back and think of how really physically unwell I was, like most of my children's lives. And I, you know, I haven't really thought about that too much yet, but I would say I still have a lot of anger, frustration over, you know, how much was taken away and the fact that I didn't recognize it for so long. But I think the thing that kind of sticks out the most to me is like how tough I've been. Like I look back and I think I have not had an easy time. Like even on the drugs, I had so many symptoms and, you know, physical, mental, like so much disconnection. And I just did what I had to do to get through. Like I was present with my kids, you know, I had a full life. I volunteered. I was very active in church, in the community, you know, a lot. And I did all of that, like severely diminished, you know? Yeah. So I think looking back, I don't know how I have done as much as I've done. And that makes me, this isn't really what you're asking for, but it does make me kind of excited about the future, because I think now, you know, with mental clarity and shedding a chronic illness, you know, that's kept me feeling so bad for so long, like, what will I be able to do next, you know?
Tough, very tough. Bayless
Yeah.
talks about that too. Like, you'll be strong as nails when you're done.
Yeah.
I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another question. This is probably hard for the audience to hear, and I want to apologize in advance, but I have to ask it because it pertains to my story too. But when I look back, I'm like, okay, 13 years on meds, 7 years to heal. Basically 20 years of my life have been either dealing with effects, thinking I was mentally ill, healing from it. 20 years is no small amount of time.
No.
And it's not fair. It's not fair. Okay. And then to be chronically disabled because of it. So how do you explain that to yourself, or how do you deal with it? Like, I think there's just this expectation. I'm going to get off these drugs. I'm going to heal and it'll be over and I can move on with a normal-ish life, you know?
Yeah.
And I found that has not been exactly true. Not to say I don't live a good life anyway. Do I wish my life was different? Sure. Do I wish I had gone through that? No.
Yeah.
But like, here I am. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, how do you deal with that? Knowing how many years you lost and how you still have, I don't know, like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely feel angry about it. I feel like it makes me angry and it's frustrating. And then I have my moments where I feel all of that. And then I just try to look at what I have now and just be thankful that, you know, my family has survived intact. I can't talk about this too much or I'll cry, but, my
You can cry,
husband
by the way. You can
has
cry.
been
You can cry.
amazing. And, you know, a lot of people, when they go through this, they lose their marriages. You know, and our marriage is so much stronger than it was before. And I know that's not a common story, and I'm really thankful for that. And my children are well adjusted. They're 21, 19, and 13. And sometimes I look back and think like the things that they saw and had to go through. And, you know, my husband did such an amazing job of protecting them as much as he could and helping them, you know, be able to, you know, maintain a normal life and do normal activities. And really, I feel like they've come out relatively unscathed, which is amazing considering how much suffering I went through, and it wasn't always containable, you know.
Yeah.
It was very obvious. So super thankful for that. So I think like it also helps that, you know, my family and I talk to my mom about it a lot too, are very, you know, very validating. You know, it's like nobody's like, well, you shouldn't look back and or you shouldn't, you know, regret or, you know, be angry or whatever. You shouldn't have these negative emotions about it. My sister, same. It's so, you know, that's helpful that they kind of like give me my space to be frustrated about it. I try not to stay there too long. And it does help for me. The distraction is my kids. And so yeah, I've kind of made peace with the fact that there's so much that I will never truly make peace with, you know, and that's okay. Because I think like part of the human experience is like we all have trauma, and it's normal to have trauma, and it really stinks, but it is what it is. And it's just, this is just my story. I don't know why I went through this. If I could change it, I would. I know a lot of people say very graciously that, you know, I wouldn't take it back because it taught, you know, good for those people. I don't necessarily feel that way yet. But you know, it's what happened, and I'm just thankful to be closer to the other side of it. And again, just my family intact, and I'm proud of myself for getting through it. And now you're gonna make me cry.
I already crying. I'm crying because of a comment in the just that here, I'll read it to you and you'll probably cry with me. It's fine to cry. This is what they robbed us of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is from Mel, who I really love. She said, "This is a really important point, Angie. Repressing your life's narrative. I've been able to see so clearly what has actually been happening rather than what I believed what was happening at the time. It's always been about the on and off of psych drugs. I wonder what I would have been without this. What I might have actually achieved with my life."
Yes.
That part just really like affects me. So I want to talk about really quick, just that when I was in college, I have a really good friend, Jesse. He's like a big black guy, like huge muscles. He's a drill sergeant in the Army. He's got this like just loving voice, but he's a teddy bear. And he's one of my best friends to this day. He's a social worker. Also, we're in social work school together. He Right when we were graduating, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm still really sick. I really can't do much. I can't work yet. I can't even believe I got through school. Like, I don't know what to do. So there's this chalkboard in our office and I drew this picture and I said, this is my life's trajectory. And I was like, high school trauma, this, Army trauma. Then I got sick. Then I went on disability. Then this, then I went down this huge slope where I almost killed myself. And then now I'm trying to work my way back up. And now I'm in social work school and now I'm graduating. And he looked at the board, he said, Angie, but do you see that despite everything that you went through, you still ended up maybe in the same place? And I was like, I don't know about that. Even now, like, I feel like my brain, like when I see other people, this is so vulnerable, I'll just say it. I see other people that write really well. And I see people that they can write papers and they can write books and they can memorize things or learn a language or read a book, or I still have trouble with all that stuff. My gift is just being vulnerable and being with people and conversations. That's what I'm okay with now.
Yes.
That's all I can, but so I think to myself, like, no, I'm not at my capacity or where I could have been because my brain still doesn't work all the way. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I'll just put that out there.
No, me
I
either.
don't believe that at all. I think that like we're all just, we're just having a human experience, and things happen that are terrible and have no explanation. Some things are redeemed, some are never redeemed to the side of heaven. That's what I believe. But when I listen to you say that, I think like, what if you had a quote unquote normal life? You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here doing what you're doing. And so many people need you. And, I have been for a few years kind of like not involved in the bind community because, I just want to, for the last couple of years, I always say like I've lived with one foot in, I call it withdrawal land, but we'll say a bind land and one foot in the real world, but just kind of like, not needing the support so much anymore. And it's only been recently that Bayless had just happened to post something, an interview with Dr. Witt During. That's kind of how I found him. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, kind of looking back and seeing that people are recognizing it now and psychiatrists is recognizing it. And then I saw your interview with him, and that was kind of a life-changing, like light bulb moment for me, because I always said like, I'm not going to write a success story. I'm not going to talk about this. I don't want to stick around the community. I just want to like be done with this and move on. When I saw your interview, and just, there's such a need for people like you, and you have something that not everyone has. You're so relatable. You're so warm. You're so transparent. And people really relate to that, and you're honest, and you're just, the compassion that you have for people, we feel it. And
you're gonna make me cry. Stop it.
So that's why.
No, but I do think, and like you too, maybe, I do think, and this is just recently, I was like, I think that's why, no, how do I say it a different way? My withdrawal was so bad. Had I not gone through that, I would not be able to help people because I wouldn't get it. I would just think, you're ridiculous. You're being hysterical. You're being dramatic. No, this is real. What these people feel is real. Believe every word they say. It's I knew it. And the scary part for me, to be honest, is that I've listened to thousands of cases now at this point, and I'm like, holy crap, Angie, you're worse than you thought. You know what I mean? Because I hear everybody, you can't help it. It's not that I'm comparing myself, but you start to see patterns, and you start to see like what do akathisia cases have versus somebody who's on one antidepressant. What happens when people are long-term, when they're 80 years old coming up, you know what I mean? You can't help it. But I'm like, oh my God, like I still can't believe I made it through that. But thank God that's a skill for me, or I don't know. What is the word? Like that's a, advantage that I have, is that I did have such a bad experience that I can help people that are in it right now in the heat of it. And like you and I, we didn't have somebody up ahead. Baylissa was probably it. Jen, I couldn't afford coaching. I was on disability, but I watched, like, they were the only two saying like, keep going, you'll be okay. I didn't really know anything about their life. I didn't see what they were doing in the real world. I didn't see them on video. I had no idea. All I had was like little words of comments. But so I think it's important that even you and I just say like, yeah, life still is worth living. We can't change what happened to us. It sucks. It's terrible. It's not fair. It's, excuse my language, it's fucking bullshit what happened to us. And we still don't have the validation that we sought, but like, it's going to be okay. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And just and again, that's why hearing you speak, and I said this when we talked a few weeks ago, you know, just having a platform to share my story now, which I never thought I would do, but having that platform, I appreciate it so much. And just, you know, realizing, like, watching you, what you do, how you've told your story, and just the passion you have and the empathy that you have for other people. I just thought, you know, this happened to me, and I didn't have an Angie, because you and I, you know,
we were in it.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for people who are in the thick of it to have someone to say that, you know, this is what I went through. Here's my story. It was horrible, and you're going to be okay. And I really started feeling that pull to share my story, because I thought people need this. I needed this when I was going through it. And like you said, I had Baylissa, she saved me.
Saved your life. Yes. Or just helped you save your own life.
Yes. Just the information and the compassion that she has, and the passion she has for, you know, saying like, you're going to get better. You know, sometimes she'll say it, you know, she gets really passionate about that. And I needed that. I needed her, like, calm, still voice, and that, you know, the stability that she brought. But I just, everything kind of flipped when I saw that interview with you. I thought, like, I went through this. What am I going to do about it? There's so many people out there who need to hear my story, and who need to see that I'm still here, and that I'm, you know, I made it, as bad as it was. And like you, the more stories I hear, I'm one of the worst cases that I've read about. And that was part of why I didn't recognize what was happening to me earlier, is because I thought, well, okay, I'm worse than that. Like, are we sure this is still what it is? But, you know, just giving people hope, and giving people permission to just survive. Like, I that's a huge thing. Like I said earlier, there's no expectation for you to be positive or optimistic or hopeful or believe, or, you know, make the best out of the situation. It's a terrible situation. You just survive. That's all. Just survive.
Yeah. Somebody yesterday, and I think they are watching, they were saying, Angie, you told me about suffering well. And I said, like, you know, in the midst of me in bed counting my heartbeats, I couldn't do it all the time, but, you know, I was listening to audiobooks, or I was watching YouTube videos. I was trying to make sense of what happened to me. I couldn't read, I couldn't watch TV, nothing like that. But it felt like there was something about, while I was suffering, I was doing something else to distract, or to make the time go by faster. And so, like, I left the experience with something that helped others or whatever. And that person yesterday was like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I need to be productive. I'm like, no. It's, I was like, that's not what I meant, like, and I explicitly pointed out to them, like, you're growing closer to your family. You're staying alive. Like it, that's enough. There's nothing else you have to do. Like it's not. I just mean, like, I don't know. I think there was something, even as you come out of it, like, you can't do it till you can do it. But like, you just even reevaluating your life, or what you will put up with, or relationships places in your life that you didn't stand up for yourself, or, what you put in your body, or how you relate to people in your family. Like, all these things happen, they come out of it. It's a natural part of the process. There's nothing you have to do. It just, that's what happens, and that's kind of what I mean by when I say, like, suffering well. Like, something does come out of this. You're going to suffer. You can't help it, but there's something that does come out of it. I don't know. So,
and I think maybe that the suffering well part does come later on. Like you said, you can't do it until you can do it. I mean,
staying alive. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's I think one of the reasons that Matt's interview really spoke to me, even on this side of it, I just thought, like, oh my gosh, yes. Like I listened to some really bad advice and some really hurtful things, and it really harmed me. And it really sent me down a road of, like, hating myself and hating God, and feeling really bitter, and feeling like my life had no purpose or meaning because I couldn't make the best out of this terrible situation. And I just feel like it's so important to give people permission to just survive the day. That's enough. That's enough.
Yeah. I don't think it came out well when I was talking about it I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant, but anyway.
And distraction is great when you can do it. And there might be moments of days that you can do that. And that's great. I mean, regardless of whether you can distract or not, or whether you're just crying 24/7, you're still going to get better. It's still going to, it's just I really, this situation is terrible. But like Baylissa always says, you have a good prognosis. And
healing is inevitable.
It's there's an expiration date, and we just have to wait until we get to that point, and just hang on.
All right, so we're coming to the end. I want to go back and read some of these comments. That's kind of what I was trying to do. It's so hard to listen and read comments at the same time, but basically, hold on, I'm just gonna scan and see what we got. A lot of thank yous. Proud of you, Michelle. Thank you for doing this. True grit. We all have true grit. We got, today I celebrate 11 months off after 20 years of use. It's been a rough, but I'm symptom free and doing great.
That's awesome.
What else? Just imagine how even more powerful it will be as time passes. Let's see. That's the one that made me cry. 18 years, almost half my life, so much regret. Now we're all crying. I couldn't cry for so long. Hold on. You make me feel better. Oh, we're all crying. What else? Is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for Michelle? Anything?
Ask away.
Ask away. Now's the chance.
I feel like here.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Here's some of the symptoms.
Oh my gosh. Yep. I have almost the same thing. Every 6 months I would write them, and then I would try to delete, and I'd be like, oh, I still don't have any feeling in my stomach. Like, come on, it's been 6 months, like it's just ridiculous.
I know. Like I said, just trying to retell the story. Like, I'm so aware of just not, like, it's like, how much time do we have? And
I know,
am I going to bore everyone? But I mean, I show you that just to say to everyone out there, it was really, really bad. And I have come a long way. And I am at the point now where I know I will be done with this eventually.
It has to. I mean, that's just, you watch it over the years, things that you never thought would go away. Or I'm sure you said the same thing. If I could just get rid of this inner akathisia feeling, or if I could just, the tinnitus would just go away. If I hear that all the time, and it's like, if my dizziness was so bad, I mean, literally for like 5.5 years, like I bend over. Somebody was asking me yesterday, like, you were in an RV at 3 years off. I was like, yeah, I couldn't even bend over to fill my water. Like I would literally fall, and the whole world was spinning, you know. But things go away over time and you just can't help but watch it. And it's sort of fascinating. Like I say this every once in a while, but I have a degree in psychology, like bachelor's of science. And so I was always been fascinated by the mind and like, what does it do and what's it capable of? So when I went through this, I was 90% horrified at how I was feeling. And then like 10% fascinated. Like, oh my God, like, what is this? We don't even have language for the symptoms that we felt. There's like literally no words. So to see your brain heal from the inside out and see how long it takes, but to see things line up, to even have touchstones, I'm sure you can relate to this, but like from time to time, every time you drive the same road or when you go to the same grocery store every year, and then it gets easier and easier and easier. And that is the trajectory that's happening, whether you want it to or not, or whether you believe it's going to happen or not, that is what happens.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to close. Let me see. Here's a comment. Wait. Being put on meds as a kid, did you struggle more with resentment and anger, given the fact that you couldn't consent?
I assume that's like in hindsight, because at the time, like I didn't think about that.
You didn't know.
I don't think I've thought about that so much because of the relationship I have with my mom, and because my mom was trying to do what she could to help me, and she had no idea, and she feels terrible, and she's apologized a million times, but she was just she was listening to the doctors and trying to help me. And she didn't have information. There was no Google back then, she just trusted that the doctors knew what they were talking about, and it would make me feel better. So my resentment is toward the doctor. And, he was actually a family friend, and he was also bipolar. And I think that was why he was very much, he knew about psychiatric medication. I have no idea how he, if he prescribed those medications to other people, or children at a frequent rate. I don't know that, but I think that his background probably had something to do with the fact that he felt comfortable prescribing them freely, and to a 9-year-old, so yeah, I do have a lot of resentment towards him. I think, even back in the day, I feel like that was so negligent to prescribe these medications to a child. Of course, we know more now, but like tricyclic antidepressants, you have to have a full cardiac panel done before they put you on those now. And I was 9.
Right.
So, I feel a lot of anger about that. I don't think that he did anything maliciously, but it was, it was ignorant, irresponsible, and it changed the course of my life for sure. And then,
and what struck me was they didn't even investigate like what was going on. They just that's a tragedy to me. Yeah. All right, one more question, and then we'll close with some hope. But a person's asking about, your husband seems amazing. Can you give any recommendations or encouragement to spouses out there that are getting burned out?
My husband, just in general, his personality is, he's very strong. He's kind of a rock. My kids call him Superman. He's just, he's kind of just steady. So, he believed me. He never questioned. He didn't, blame me for what happened. He, just in general, his personality is, he makes life easier for other people. That's kind of his MO. It's just kind of, I guess, his personality. But so I don't know. I'm very aware of how lucky I am, but that's my reality. That's my normal, that's how he's always been. I think just, I wonder what he would say to answer this question. I think just, he was just supportive. Oh, it's that.
No, I was like, call him. No, just
you go get him. I just him believing me, and you know what he would always tell me? He would always tell me, you're going to get better. You're going to get better. You're going to get better. And I would say, how do you know? And he's like, because that's what I want. Ooh. And that was like, wow. You know, really, he's like, that's what I want. So that's how I choose to think.
Wow. And like he was pulling you forward.
Yeah. Wow. He was just, you know, he made it very clear that he was going to do whatever he could to help me get through it. So, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that.
That was perfect. That was good enough. Okay. So let's end on hope. What hope would you leave with people going through it? I know you said a lot of stuff already, but what's your closing thoughts about hope and how to get through this journey?
Oh, I know. I feel like all the things I've already said. But I think just, you know, I want to say to everyone who's watching that I was where you are, and I'm better now. I'm not done, but I'm so much better. And I know that I will be done eventually, and we all will be. And just again, like, I can't say enough. Like, you know, one thing I was thinking about last week when I was thinking about this interview is, for so long, I needed validation. I wanted accountability. And I just felt like I needed that. And I needed confirmation about what was actually happening to me. And I learned through this process that you can't look to other people to give you that. We have all of that we need inside of us. And we also have it in this community. And so, you know, I am validating your experience. I understand. And I've been in the worst of places, and I've come out of it. And again, just the confidence that everyone will be better. And if I can recover, if I can get from where I was to where I am now, you will too. And we just have to hang on, just survive, keep going. Whatever you've got to do, just get through it. And you'll string enough days together to where you'll start noticing improvement, and just know that you have a life waiting for you on the other side of this.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said that any better. You nailed it. Oh, well, thank you, Michelle. You're definitely a soul sister for me, at least.
Yes, I know. I'm so thankful for you. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Giving you a hug.
One of these days we're gonna meet.
I'm gonna roll up in your driveway. You better watch out.
Yes, I will look forward.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me. Thank you for surviving to tell the tale.
You're welcome.
Thank you for, you know, sharing your heart with the audience, the people. I think this is my most well-attended Facebook Live ever. I'm shocked how many people. I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to get scared, but anyway, 38 people stuck with us the whole time. 38.
Oh, wow,
so thank you to all 38 of you. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm sure when it goes on YouTube, there'll be thousands more. So thank you so much for just being who you are, for surviving, and for sharing your story.
Thank you. Back at you. Thanks for letting me share it.
Yeah. All right. So everybody in the audience, thank you so much for attending. Coming up in the next few weeks, we have Adele Framer from Surviving Antidepressants. We have Geraldine Burns, who is the matriarch of the benzo recovery movement. And we have Natasha Campbell McBride, MD, who's the creator of the GAPS diet. We're going to talk about gut health. So there's cool interviews coming up. I have a couple more in the works. Oh, and Anne Guy from the UK about supporting people in withdrawal and what therapists need to know. Those are the next 4 coming up. If you have any suggestions for people I should talk to, please put them in the comments. And again, please just like my page if you can. If you're on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. That really helps get this information out there and more people see it, so we can maybe prevent some of the harm out there. I don't know. It's so widespread. But anyway, thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye-bye.